So let's get our daily started and introducing the Director of Delaware State Housing Authority, Anas Benedi. He has been the Director of the State Housing Authority since Governor Markell appointed him, and he was confirmed by the Senate in January of 2009. More recently, he has worked closely with Governor Markell to introduce two new initiatives for the benefit of Delaware's residents: the Downtown Development District Grant Program and the Challenge to End Veterans Homelessness, both of which are our topics for today's conference. Needing no further introduction, let me turn the mic over to Anas Benedi.
Good morning. Thank you, Pam, for the kind introduction. I really want to thank Delaware NAHRO board and volunteers for the great work that you do. Special shout out and special thanks to Paula Sims for this great event and for the great work that you do, Paula, as well. Let's hear it for Paula. For somebody who's working on this on part-time basis, you do really a good job. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here with you today, especially when I looked at the agenda and saw that the two topics that people will talk about today are community development and veteran homelessness, which have been dear to us at DSHA for the last couple of years. We have invested a lot of energy, staff time, and resources on both topics. I will not spend much on the community development piece because I understand my boss will be talking about that, and I don't want to steal his thunder. So I will spend a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, on veteran homelessness, which really started with the governor's announcements last year during his state address, where he announced two things. First, that he will be signing on to the federal challenge to end veteran homelessness. And the second one was to task DSHA and Health Social Services to come up with a plan to end the veteran homelessness. So last year, we came up with a plan, and we invited all the partners really to join us and commit to ending veteran homelessness. So really, the good news when we looked at it to assess the situation was that we had enough resources to do it. And the three main obstacles that we have identified last year were, first of all, coordination of services. The second one, coordination of information, just to know who is homeless, how many we have, what's the progress that we are making. And the third one was additional resources for veterans who do not qualify for the federal subsidies and federal programs, which are either folks who are National Guard and never get activated, or folks who were part of our armed forces, but they were discharged dishonorably. And we cannot just turn our back and say, yes, because you're discharged, we're not going to be able to assist you. So what we have put in place is really, in terms of coordination, taking the model that was already established in Dover and Kent County with the lead of Bill Farley, good to see you here, and Mayor Christensen, and try to replicate that in Newcastle and Sussex. And we were able to establish working groups in all three counties. And the working groups have folks from the state, folks from the local jurisdiction, volunteers, nonprofits, and for-profits who were meeting on a monthly basis to really, on the ground, assess the situation and see what could be done. We formed a state group that was tasked with coordinating the services, making sure the information from the ground is coming up to identify who is homeless, and also keep track of the progress and make sure that the local groups are aware of the services that are available. The third component was setting aside state funding to establish 20 vouchers on the state rental assistance program to help veterans who do not qualify for the federal assistance. So I'm happy to report that we were able to identify roughly on the calendar year 2015, roughly about 300 veterans who were homeless. As of 2 weeks ago, because we didn't stop, we kept on going with the work, we have identified roughly about 396. We have permanently housed roughly about 300 of those, and temporary housed around 90, and we have less than a handful who are still unsheltered as of today. The other good news is that we were able to submit last week our application to the federal government seeking designation as a state that has effectively ended veteran homelessness. So that application went out last week, end of last week, so I'm looking at you, Maria. So if you see anybody who is here from HUD, feel free to lobby on behalf of this great state. But really, we could have not done this without many people and many organizations that I'm not going to name. So just to say, to those who have driven a veteran to an event or an appointment, to those who have issued a voucher, to those of you who have applied for extra funding, to those who have lobbied hard landlords to take veterans, even if they didn't have a perfect credit, to those who have driven throughout the state to talk to elected officials to make sure that they join the challenge, and to those who have woke up at 2 a.m. and left your house on a rainy day to go and find the veterans under the bridges, thank you. We could have not done it without you. Thank you very much. So it is my pleasure to introduce the person with the vision and the plans for us to execute, our Governor, Jack Markell.
Well, good morning, everybody. Anas, thank you, and thank you for the great job that you have been doing. I also want to acknowledge our Attorney General, Matt Dehn, who is sitting over here. We are very fortunate in this state to have an Attorney General who gets it and who really understands the need to focus on some of the root issues of the many challenges that we have to deal with, and certainly that his office has to deal with, and he has been such a great champion of housing as an important component of how we solve these problems. And I'd ask you to join me in thanking our Attorney General. So great to be with all of you. I have my brother with me. My brother, who lives in Florida and is visiting my mom for a few days, and he's spending the day with me. And as we came in, we started our day down at Eisenberg Elementary in the Colonial School District, where they are unveiling a phenomenal new wellness center at an elementary school. And it's a great community partnership. And we started there when we came here, and we specifically went by the parking lot where ground has just been broken, about 2 or 3 blocks from here, where they've just started. They're going to build 230 new residential units in Wilmington, which is pretty amazing. And I thought, particularly given this event, I wanted to go and just sort of see the fact that they had started and show it to my brother. And it struck me as Anas was talking about what I think is a really significant story around our collaborative efforts to end veterans' homelessness. And I like the way he talked about it, because he made it so clear that this was a group effort. I mean, state government could not have done this by itself, and none of our jurisdictions could have. And he mentioned many of the parties that had worked together to make that happen. And the same is true with respect to community development more broadly. And I know in a little while you're going to be hearing from a great trio, Carrie Gray from Wilmington Renaissance, and Jeff Flynn from the city, and Mike Hare from Buccini Poland. And I think it's important that you're hearing from them. They represent 3 really very different backgrounds, sort of the not-for-profit sector, the for-profit development sector, and the city. But that's what it takes. And so, this whole idea, I know one of that panel very much around community development, and the state's role. Anas mentioned our downtown development districts, which the idea, when we started this just a couple years ago, the idea was very simple. And we did a lot of research, and we found a program in Virginia that we thought we ought to model ourselves after. And the idea was that a small amount of public money could leverage a significant amount of private money. And in just a couple of years, in Wilmington alone, $6 million of state money has leveraged $120 million of private investment, which is incredible. And if you just, all you have to do, and I see Mike sitting in the back now, and if you, Market Street alone, in the last year, 75 new residential units have opened up. And the Walgreens renovated new units on top. And there are several of those projects right on Market Street. And it's going very well, and this new 230 residential unit building is another example. We worked with Interfaith here in Wilmington on some of their projects. And I just think the way that all of this is tying together between the creative district, and I know some of you will be taking a walking tour later to see some of the exciting developments as a result of the creative district, some of these bigger projects I talked about, and some of the smaller projects. The idea was we want to push some of these projects over the top, and that's exactly how it's been described to me. Some of these projects, same thing, by the way, in Seaford and in Dover. There has not been real new development in Seaford in a very long time. But because of this program, ground has been broken, steel is going up for 72 new high-end residential units right on the Nanticoke. Otherwise, it would have just been sitting there. And there are projects in Dover as well. And so there is a role for the state to play, but it's not a sustainable role unless the private sector follows. And that is exactly what's happening. So we are so appreciative to all of you who are, as Anas described it to me as I walked in this morning, sort of the professionals in the housing space. Housing is such and I know I'm preaching to the choir, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but we have seen, and we've done a lot of analysis over the years. $1 invested in housing yields a huge return, one of the best returns you actually can see in terms of all the places that government can put its money. It is a huge return. And so we are really proud of the work that we've done under Anas's leadership with the Council on Housing, who have done a phenomenal job. Vincent is here today from the Council on Housing. Not sure if the others are, but we've got a really strong Council on Housing, and they, working in partnership with the SHA, have just done an amazing job. So I am particularly appreciative to all of you who are sort of we're all working together. This is one of those places where we really do have to check our egos at the door. It doesn't matter who gets the credit. But when we see hundreds and hundreds of people moving into Wilmington who are, people want to live in our urban areas. They want to work in our urban areas. They want to enjoy themselves in our urban areas. And we see it happening in Wilmington. And that's not to say we don't have more to do, because we do. But I think it's a very good trajectory that we're on. And with all of your help, all of us working together, I am confident that that forward progress will continue in a big way. So just thank you very much for the opportunity to stop by. I hope you have a very educational day. You've got some great speakers coming up, and thanks for all that you do.
Thank you, Governor Markell. In recognition of all that you have done for housing and community development during the time you've been as governor, Delaware NAHRO would like to present you with the Robert S. Moyer Award. This Robert S. Moyer Award recognizes a person for their outstanding contributions and for their exceptional work in the housing and community development arena in the state of Delaware. The prestigious award was first given in 2006 and continues to be a much honored distinction for those who are dedicated to the field of housing and community development. The award is named in honor of one of the founding fathers of the Delaware chapter of the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials, Mr. Moyer, who I believe was the first director of the Delaware State Housing Authority. During Governor Markell's tenure, the state has invested in affordable rental housing, incentivized the development of fully accessible housing for residents with disabilities, and increased homeownership opportunities. Delaware now boasts the third highest rate of homeownership among the states. Governor Markell has been an advocate for affordable housing and community development that has been demonstrated by his many investments in Delaware's low to moderate income families and communities such as Delaware's SRAMP vouchers and the Downtown Development District initiatives. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Thank you. Why don't we go in front of the podium for your picture?
Hi, my name is Michael Fortner. I work for the City of Newark's Planning and Development Department. I'm on the board of the Delaware NAHRO. I'm here to introduce our next speakers. Our next speaker is our Attorney General, Delaware's Attorney General, Matt Dehn. He took office in January 2015 and has focused on the issues of reducing violent crime in Delaware. He proposed a plan for more police officers on patrol in Wilmington, legislation to crack down on young people caught with guns, and proposed using bank settlement funds for programs addressing crime along with the root cause issues of addiction, education, reentry, and housing. He also established a new Office of Civil Rights and Public Trust. Matt Dehn was the state's elected insurance commissioner from 2005 to 2009. During that time, Matt led the charge to pass laws restricting credit scoring and unfair cancellation of homeowners insurance and fought to limit increases in Delaware's insurance rates. So Attorney General Matt Dehn.
Good morning, everyone. This is the first time I've been back in here since my first show that I saw downstairs a few months ago. My wife, I love live music. My wife loves it less than I do. So for many years, she had sort of been humoring me, and we were going to shows in Philly, and I had been bugging her to come here, and the one condition that she had was, she said, we're older now, I just don't want to stand up for an hour and a half. I want to sit and listen to the music. So I waited until there was a band coming here that I really wanted to see, and I waited to buy the tickets online the minute that they went on sale, and I got the 2 seats in the very front of the room, the best possible seats you can get, and I absolutely promised her that we would sit through the entire show. And she wore some kind of shoes that you're not supposed to stand up in for a long period of time. And then those of you who have been here before for shows know that the seats that you should get if you want to sit through the show are very much not the seats that are right in front of the stage. Those are, in fact, the worst possible seats you can get if you want to sit through the show. So we stood through the show. But I'm in touch with people here who have now will communicate to her that there actually are seats that you can sit in where you can sit through the entire show. So in fact, the very same band is coming back at the end of June. So we are in negotiations within the Dehn household for a return trip where we will sit through the entire show. The governor made some brief mention to it, but let me just sort of talk about what the heck I'm doing here. This is not sort of a typical forum where you would see an attorney general or a law enforcement person speaking. But urban redevelopment and community development has become a very important priority for us for 2 really closely related reasons, one of which is that community redevelopment is an important component of our overall effort that you just heard about to try to reduce violent crime in our state. And really the flip side of that coin also, cities that have very high levels of crime really face an uphill struggle in trying to achieve those community redevelopment efforts, and we want to try to be helpful in getting that part of it done as well. And what I wanted to try to do this morning is just to focus on 3 areas where our state's trying to work on these issues, both here in Wilmington and also statewide. Number 1, trying to develop a coordinated focus by law enforcement specifically on abatement of ongoing criminal nuisance properties. Secondly, trying to work with state and local governments to address the issue of vacant parcels, again, both here in Wilmington and throughout the state. And then third, trying to work to improve statewide coordination to focus what you just heard about again in the introduction, financial crisis settlement money resources very specifically to redevelopment efforts. So let me talk first about the nuisance properties. As I mentioned, community development is really made more difficult when you have ongoing and very visible drug operations going on in neighborhoods and all of the violence and specifically gun violence that's often associated with those drug trafficking activities. And as I meet with civic associations and civic organizations here in the city and the county and talk to frontline law enforcement officials in both, it's become very clear to me that a lot of these drug operations and other activities are happening in very specific residences, very specific business locations that are generally pretty well known to the people who live in the area. So it's good for community redevelopment, and it's also just smart law enforcement work to try to focus some time and very specific effort on those properties that, again, there's general knowledge in the community are the locus for a lot of the activity that's going on. In 2011, my predecessor, Bo Biden, had the foresight to successfully ask the legislature to amend the state's nuisance property law to provide our office with much broader authority to actually take some civil actions against properties where criminal nuisances were taking place. It's something that, frankly, he doesn't get enough credit for. But my assessment, after having spent some time on this job, was that we really weren't using this tool that the legislature had given us enough or as aggressively as we ought to try to remedy some of these nuisances. So in particular, over the past 6 months or so, a group of deputy attorneys general and investigators in our office have started working in a much more intensive way with law enforcement, again, both here in the city and throughout the state, to try to abate ongoing criminal activity at some of these very specific parcels that we've identified, and to try to shut down some specific parcels that have been serving as focuses for drug dealing. And the results are starting to show. We're actually now starting to see some positive impact from these efforts. Just since the beginning of this year, we've had judicial orders or consent agreements for abatements on 7 parcels and otherwise resolved criminal nuisances on an additional 8 properties without having to have court involvement. We're negotiating formal resolutions on 6 more parcels in addition to the one that I just mentioned, and we have another 2 complaints that are about to be filed in the Superior Court. And just to give you some sense of what all that activity gives you in terms of real visible relief, these are the kind of things that we're seeing on these properties that I just mentioned. Some of them we've actually had the properties closed down. Some of them we have new reporting and notice requirements. We have no contact orders in some of these properties with respect to the specific individuals who we were made aware were causing the problems on these properties. Some of these property owners, as a condition of being permitted to keep their properties open, have had to agree to have management companies oversee the rentals of the properties. They have had to agree to have crime-free addendums in their leases that they give to the folks who are on the properties, mandatory criminal background checks in the case of some properties for folks to whom the properties are rented. And some of them have agreed to contingent remedies in order to be able to stay open, such as automatic sheriff sales for noncompliance with the agreements or financial penalties. So these are real visible changes that are happening on these properties. And again, we think that these are important both for basic law enforcement purposes, but also to try to create an environment where redevelopment can take place and where individuals and companies want to come in and take root in the community. Second issue I want to talk about is vacant properties. And we know, as I suspect most of you do, that there is a very real correlation between large numbers of vacant properties and high levels of crime. Our best estimate is that Wilmington has about 1,500 vacant properties, and that puts Wilmington roughly in the range of Baltimore in terms of a per capita basis and higher than some of our surrounding cities like Philadelphia in terms of vacant properties on a per capita basis. And there really is a high correlation between the areas of the city where we have a lot of vacant properties and high incidences of crime. About a third of those vacant properties, by the way, have been vacant for more than 5 years. Some people assume that the relationship goes one way and that there are a lot of vacant properties because there's a lot of crime in the area. But our analysis of it is that it goes both ways, and that the existence of those vacant properties actually contributes to and helps to generate criminal activity in those same neighborhoods. A lot of these vacant properties are not secured, and as we have looked at them, we frequently see heroin needles on the floors of these properties. We see evidence of guns being hidden inside of these vacant properties. The steps of these vacant properties where there's no resident to actually have ownership of the property end up being a location for drug transactions. So the very existence of the vacant properties can serve as a focus for crime, and if we really want to turn the corner on crime, then we have to address those vacant properties as part of the broader solution. I know that your keynote speaker later today is the Director of Policy for the Center for Community Progress, and our office has been working with that center and with the City of Wilmington to try to evaluate the city's current process for handling vacant houses, and we're actually working with the city and with the center to try to improve that process. Center for Community Progress recommended that one key element to facilitating that change is creating a land bank specifically for the City of Wilmington, and that's now formed, and it's actually in the process of putting in place a structure to accept vacant properties from sheriff sales and to get those houses back into productive use. So we're very encouraged by the progress that's been seen in getting this land bank set up, and very optimistic that it's going to be successful and help move us towards that long-term goal of reducing the number of vacant properties in the city. Finally, let me finish with what I think is some good news. In 2014, as our office began reaching some settlements with national banks for some of their conduct on the financial markets. Attorney General Biden started an effort that I've continued to try to ensure that significant portions of those settlements were dedicated specifically to the construction and the rehabilitation of affordable housing. And the primary program that was established for that effort was a Strong Neighborhoods Housing Fund that is overseen very ably by NAHRO and the State Housing Authority. And the first round of grants from that fund in early 2015, $2.7 million were awarded to the Wilmington Housing Partnership, to Interfaith Community Housing, Central Delaware Habitat for Humanity, and the Newcastle County Department of Community Services. And some very important efforts were started as a result of that initial round of $2.7 million in funding. I'm very pleased to report that just about a week ago, Anas was just asking me when we came in, is the money there yet? About a week ago, after about a year and a half of negotiations with the General Assembly, another $5.7 million from settlements with national banks. Is that number right? Thank you. $5.7 million in settlements with national banks. And that, again, that's double the amount that was in the first round of settlements, has been dedicated to that very same fund. And that's going to allow for twice the amount of rehabilitation and construction that took place in the first round to take place. So this is significant, real amounts of money that are going to result in some real visible change. And we're very pleased that, again, after what has seemed like a very long and arduous process of trying to get this money going where it's supposed to be going, that we were successful, and we're going to see the results of it. I just want to echo what the governor said in terms of the broad, private, and public scope of the effort that's going on, and thank all of you who are here for the work that you're doing to try to address housing in our state. And in our office, we're going to try to continue to be good partners in the effort to create good, affordable, safe housing for all Delawareans. And thank you for letting me visit with you this morning.
Thank you, Attorney General Den. Our next speaker is the Council President for the City of Wilmington, Theo Gregory. Was elected as President of the Wilmington City Council on November 6, 2012. He has enjoyed a broad career in both in and out of public service. He was a Reginald Hebert Smith Fellow, which enabled him to practice poverty law at the Delaware Community Legal Aid Society from 1977 to 1979. Theo was then appointed by President Jimmy Carter in 1979 as the first African-American Assistant United States Attorney for the District of Delaware, a position he held until 1984. Theo was in private practice from 1984 to 1994, handling personal injury, criminal defense, probate, and real estate law. He has always chosen to locate his private practice office at the heart of the Wilmington community so that he can be visible and accessible to the citizens he serves, and with this, he has continued his public service. Again, I'd like to introduce the Council President, Theo Gregory.
Thank you. Thank you and good morning. I bring you greetings from the city of Wilmington. First, let me just say that I have been in elected office through 4 mayors here in the city of Wilmington, and all of the mayors have emphasized housing, have done a good job in emphasizing housing. And in this term, we've had 3 major initiatives. I believe 2 are statewide and 1 is designated for the city of Wilmington that continues that tradition. One would be the land bank process that's ongoing, and that's going to be phenomenal for the city of Wilmington. The downtown development district, again, is going to be a phenomenal occurrence for the city of Wilmington. And of course, the creative district is very important to the city of Wilmington. In the previous budget, we put $1.5 million into housing, hopefully supporting both the land bank as well as the Wilmington Housing Partnership and other housing initiatives. And finally, let me just say that again, I think if you ride around the city of Wilmington, and I often do that, you'll find that we've done a good job of replenishing and just correcting some problems in our city of Wilmington as it relates to housing. We don't want to become those other small cities that are around us in this northeast corridor, and we've not done that, and we can praise our mayors for that and the General Assemblies that have helped us over the years. You can see houses where you have 10 houses in a street. You may see 2 or 3. So we patched it up, but we do have blight. We do have some areas that need help, so we can do more. So let's hope that the land bank concept and the continued efforts of our mayors and our legislators at both the state and city level, we can correct those things. Thank you very much.